Welcome to Daily Variety, your daily dose of news and analysis for entertainment industry insiders. It's Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. I'm your host, Cynthia Littleton. I am co-editor-in-chief of Variety alongside Ramin Satuda. I'm in LA, he's in New York, and Variety has reporters around the world covering the business of entertainment. On today's episode, in our cover story segment, we'll talk with Matt Donnelly about his reporting that goes deep on the issues that are vexing what has historically been one of Hollywood's most misunderstood cohorts, producers. Matt spent months reporting on the work of Producers United, the collective of seasoned producers who have reached the mad as hell moment, and they're doing something about it. Matt then speaks with producers Jonathan Wang and Laura Lewis. Both of them are incredibly articulate about the dilemmas and the disrespect that contemporary producers face. But before we get to that, here are a few headlines just in this morning that you need to know. We liked it. Variety's Peter DeBruge gave a strong review to Wicked for Good. Universal Pictures is eyeing a massive opening on Friday. It's tracking for an opening weekend of 150 to 180 million, Variety's Rebecca Rubin reports. Ms. Rachel, June Squibb, Lisa Kudrow, David Schwimmer, they've all nabbed nominations for the Children and Family Emmy Awards. Those trophies will be handed out in New York on March 1st and March 2nd. Jason Reitman is leading the charge to reopen the Village Theater in Westwood. He's one of more than 24 directors who rallied to save the iconic theater last year. Now that group has set a deal with the American Cinematheque to program the venue starting in 2027. All of these stories and so much more can be found on Variety.com right now. Now it's time for conversations with industry leaders and Variety journalists about news and trends in show business. Today's episode is devoted to the cover story that is published today and on Variety.com. Matt Donnelly, Variety's senior entertainment writer, discusses the issues in his reporting on the conundrum around career producers. That's the term that Producers United uses to identify producers with fiduciary responsibilities to their projects, separating them from financiers and talent managers and the rest. Jonathan Wang and Laura Lewis are industry veterans, and their discussion with Matt really puts the issues in human terms. Matt Donnelly, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
You have pulled off a very hard story, which is a big trend story about producers. You've done a great job in your terrific cover story published today in our precious print edition and also on Variety.com. It's like dominoes. One issue leads to the other. And the impact over about 12 years of massive change in this business has been significant for producers.
And thank you for being the editor on this piece.
I used the sum total of a lot of knowledge to help guide, but you did the heavy lifting and talking to everybody. I was going to ask you some questions about your cover story, but we got two representative voices from an organization called Producers United, and your interview with them was so good that I want to devote most of the time to that.
The devotion from this group of all ranges of experiences is pretty inspiring.
I'm sure you have made a lot of type A new friends. Well, Matt, again, thanks for the labor. And with that, we're going to turn it over to your interview with Jonathan Wang and Laura Lewis.
Jonathan, Laura, if you could define for everyone what in your terms is a career producer?
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in here first and say career producers are pretty easy to spot. They are the producer who is paid just to produce. They are not the hyphenate producer. It's sometimes jokingly called the producer because there's so many producers on movies and TV shows sometimes. But broadly speaking, it is the fiduciary, it is the creative partner, it is the person who is the right hand to the director, who's overseeing every part of production, pre-production, post-production, and distribution.
Our only job on a project is the film and looking out for the film and being I like to also say, the ringleader of the circus. We oversee every single creative element in terms of pulling it together, but we don't have any other obligation, whether it's to an actor we partnered with or a writer we've partnered with or financier. Have a fiduciary responsibility to. Our responsibility is to the film. And to question, that's another way we define career producing.
For sure. And in addition to obviously being responsible for the budget and delivering a film or TV show on time, if you could just give me a varying idea of all the things that you are solely responsible for.
And we're the ones responsible for liaising with the department heads, whether that's makeup, costume, hair, edit, but also have to look out for on the flip side, the director and the writer and their vision too, and going back to the studio and the financier. So we're literally the middleman between all of those departments. I always look at it sort of like an hourglass,
Hmm.
we're this linchpin between all of the people on one side and all the people on the other side.
In like a health analogy, I think a lot of times people will view each individual department as addressing symptoms. So if a problem's coming up with an electrical issue or there's a wardrobe issue, and then there's specialists who address these little issues that arise on set. And the career producer's job is to look at the holistic health of a set and its production as a business, as an entity. So that is translating creative vision not only from a budgetary standpoint into real instantiated into the world kind of standpoint.
One of the things that this story discusses so centrally, and that is incredibly representative of all your struggles, is in the concept of credit proliferation. So I'm hoping you guys can help me explain credit proliferation in as simplest terms as possible.
The simplest way to say it is no one barters a writer or director or actor credit. You can't barter it. And we have a job, as we've just been discussing. And yet our credit is given away like it's not a job. And that leads to a whittling down of what the job means. And it also leads to whittling down of livelihoods. And it also leads to whittling down of who's responsible, which ultimately affects the film. And in no other line item in a film does that happen. It's truly only the producer line where it's just can be given away like it's a piece of candy.
Yeah. What we've been saying is some producing is not producing. So a lot
Yeah.
of people will have read a script and thought it was good and connected some dots and they go, well, that's the totality of producing. Well, that's one part of producing. It would be the same as me writing one take on a scene for a writer and then saying, I deserve the writing credit. And luckily, the WGA protects against those things and the DGA protects against people stepping on the director credit. But there is no entity currently that protects the producer credit. And that is why Producers United was formed.
And could you explain why the producer credit is vulnerable to such proliferation?
Well, if you think about how deals are made, there's always money and there's a cap on money. And there's no cap on producing credits because there's no legislative body currently or union that can say who deserves a producer credit or who does not. Agents, managers, whomever can negotiate these things and ask for them. And because producers oftentimes are going to do whatever it takes to make a movie because we are in charge of the whole health of the organism, which means getting it made in the first place. Oftentimes we're backed into a corner where we have to grant people producer credits. Other times, some managers are doing it because they have leverage over the situation where their client, they'll say they won't be in this movie unless I get a producer credit. Same thing happens with indie films with financiers where they say we will not finance this movie unless we get a producer credit. So it's a lot of leveraging. And because there's no regulatory body, depending on the situation, a lot of people have to cave or give in.
Emphasis on the word leverage. I go back to what I said up front, like our responsibility is to the film and our job is to get a film made. And often we're put in these situations where we can't say no to somebody. I mean, if I could share the number of times that now when I submit a project to an actor and the first question out of the agent's mouth is, well, can they be a producer on it? I'm like, that's a full-time job. That's not just something to dangle.
I could speak to how changes in TV series seasons and episode counts have made it harder for non-writing producers to earn a living.
Well, the biggest problem with non-writing producers earning a living is the cap. We're capped. Like, there's no other line item where there's a cap on how much a producer can make. So when I had a situation on a TV show, let's be vulnerable here, where two actors were placed on me and then their deal was done before mine. And then I was told, oh, wait, there's no money left in the producer's pot for you. It's like, wait, what? I started the process, but no other line item has a cap. So where did that come from and why did that become the precedent? So that's where our livelihood has been affected, where people are clawing into that pool of money, but yet we're going to be the one that will be responsible for being the career producer on the project.
Can I underline that just because I want to say how crazy that is? So if a director, let's just say a notable director wants to come onto a film, there's no amount of money the studio will say no to up to a limit, right? And that's up to BA to negotiate that. Same thing with actors because they provide a bunch of value. But the industry has devalued producers such that they go, oh, they're not worth more than this. And we'll also barter that credit and then compensate those people for that credit, even though they aren't rendering those services. So fill in the blank famous actor, fill in the blank famous director. You're going to get a producer credit and you're going to get paid out of that producer's fee. And then, as Laura just said, you're then left with the scraps, even though you're the one who has to render the services and actually make that movie. It's just insanity.
It doesn't seem
That's where it's
sustainable.
every single television show announcement, you never see an actor not getting an AP credit now. Like, it's just standard, and that's what's also hard is it's all been normalized.
One of the most fascinating things I learned in the process of reporting and writing this story is just how much the legacy financial ecosystem of the business was upended by streaming. So I'd love if you could unpack that a little bit.
The promise of the technology did not encapsulate the peril of the technology. And we thought it was going to lead to more deals, more films being made, more TV shows being made, more jobs to be had. But what ended up happening was there was an overpayment on talent, which then turned the whole productions upside down because your whole above the line is now way too expensive to justify shooting it here in the US. So then what happened is all those jobs left to other countries. And suddenly we have empty backlots and empty movie theaters because the streaming model had pushed all the production out and then put everything onto these streaming platforms. Now, I'm not a Luddite to say, oh, that was all terrible, but it is to say that there were externalities or there were repercussions that weren't factored into the promises. And it's the job of producers to be looking out for the health of movies and for the health of the industry. And we are seeing this degradation that's happening generationally because we're seeing there's so much disruption happening to our industry that there's no new fiduciaries coming up the pipeline. And so it's not that producers are pulling the ladder up behind us. It's that the industry currently is not set up for the health of itself to think for the long term to say, who are going to be the guides who are going to steward and usher in these next generation of projects? It feels like it's a dying breed.
I wanna, like, clap to everything you just said. You said it so well. Listen, we're not the first to live through a technology change and people changing the business model without thinking about how it's gonna affect their first business model, and the fact that so many windows were wiped out across both film and television way too fast, and now we're trying to make up for the fact that the business model wasn't figured out before we moved into this streaming future. As Jonathan aptly said, like, again, we are the ones looking out for our job as the industry and the film, so we're gonna be the stalwarts to push it forward.
Observably, there is a record low amount of overall deals that producers now enjoy with any of the major studios and streamers. There becomes a vacuum in mentorship. So if you could talk about how that will manifest in younger and more up-and-coming producers, not just getting opportunity, but not getting basic skill.
When I first started in the industry, which was 2001, all the major producers had overhead deals. They all had 2 senior execs, 2 junior execs, and multiple assistants. That's at least 4 to 6 jobs of mentees getting mentored by somebody. That's all disappeared. Like, how will people want to enter our business if they can't have an entry-level job and then grow from there? And it is really important to the ecosystem of our business that we bring those back because that's the only way to keep the pipeline going of future projects.
Yeah, I'm luckily the beneficiary of one of those deals, but I can see that the reason why I'm party to this deal is because of Daniels, right? They're the ones who have this deal with Universal. I get to be the executive of this company, and then we get the overhead to be able to do this pipeline of the next generation. But the onus is on to me to make sure that I am training our employees. So every other Friday, we do a career producer lunch where they can ask any question. I show them old budgets, I show them old deals, and I explain the process to this next generation because it's so important that there is a pipeline of people behind us. But I also am wise enough to see that should I not be in business with Daniels, I don't think I would have a deal and I wouldn't be able to do those things with our employees currently.
It's fascinating.
This is truly one of the biggest reasons Producers United exists. We want to make sure that this is a profession that subsists and continues. Like, we are worried about next generations.
Reason why we ended up having our deal at Universal is that Donna Langley said, we believe our filmmakers are our IP. That the Daniels were the IP. And to feel that vote of confidence to say from the top down of a studio that the creator and the vision that they have, that is the most beautiful leadership that you could have at a studio. And I think that we're seeing that hopefully through the indie space and the studio space, that this course correction to say we need to actually be pursuing these real voices, these real auteurs, and not just chasing IP.
Jonathan and Laura, I'm going to take a shot in the dark and say there wasn't a producer booth at your high school career fair. So I would love to know sort of what your entree was into the business and when did you know that this is what you really wanted to do?
No, there was no producer booth at my college. Like so many other people I know, I just loved stories growing up. I absolutely loved them. My first job was at 20th Century Fox Television, actually, back in the day, working for Dana Walden and Gary Newman when they were running the studio. And I was like, I want to be on this side that's making the things. Like, I finally got to see and know what people did. And I just knew I wanted to be on the side making the things.
I was a touring musician, and I've always laughed when people are like, "Oh, you're a type A producer," and I'm like, "I'm very type B. I'm actually more of a creative person than I am a budget person." But I got my start with American Zoetrope. Michael Zakin was the executive, and Roman Coppola and Sofia Coppola were kind of taking the reins over from Francis, and I used that to call all my old music contacts and say, "Hey, I work for the Coppolas," even though I was an intern. Just like hook or crook, just figured out how to produce music videos from an early age, and just kind of cornered the market on getting paid $200 to make a music video.
What's been so wonderful about Producers United coming together in the last, God, 3 years is the community. Producers have always sort of operated in a vacuum, like we're sort of isolated. Like we don't have the VJ showrunner group chats and the this and until now. And now we have this community of so many people that I think we're providing the mentorship that we're no longer getting via the studios. That's what we've created is this community of mentorship and advice and counsel. And we're just all out there for each other, which has been so absolutely wonderful.
I will say amen to that. And so if you're a young producer listening to this, come find us. Don't give up. It's really hard. We need to unite in this moment as we're facing all these different existential dreads. And it feels like it's exhausting. We're looking down like the degradation of democracy, let alone the degradation of our credits. And
Why we need our stories.
that's why we need our story.
Well, there is probably no more of a perfect note to go out on. And we thank you both so much for your time. Seriously.
As we close out today's episode, here's a few things we're watching for. Michael B. Jordan will be feted with the American Cinematheque Award on Thursday in Beverly Hills. Motion Picture Association Chairman Charles Ruvkin will receive the Power of Cinema Award. Variety is once again fanning out across continents. This week we are producing digital dailies out of the Goa Festival in India, the Doha Film Festival in Qatar, the Torino Film Festival in Italy, and out of the Cairo Film Festival in Egypt. Next week, we'll be at the film festival in Marrakesh, and we'll be in Indonesia at the Jogja Netpack Asia Film Festival. Before we go, congrats to George Cheeks, who will be honored tonight in New York at the 35th Annual Benefit for Reisenbach Philanthropies. That's an organization that supports other organizations that look to improve the quality of life for New Yorkers. Nothing wrong with that. Thanks for listening. This episode was written and edited by me, Cynthia Littleton, with contributions from Matt Donnelly. Stick, Snicks, Hick, Picks. Please leave us a review at the podcast platform of your choice, and please tune in tomorrow for another episode of Daily Variety.